All right, well, good morning. So, I want to talk about seeing the good in other people. It's been on my mind the last several weeks. It seems that we've gotten into a place in the world where we're not doing that very well. We're seeing a lot of the bad in each other and highlighting it. And it feels as if people are happy when they find something negative in somebody else. For example, and I don't remember who posted this, but I saw it on Facebook, and it was this couple, and they're each side, they got this banner in between them, and on the banner it says, "I will not sacrifice my freedom for your safety." And this was somewhere in the U.S., I know that much. And the idea of the banner was, we're not this couple, we're not abiding by lockdowns and social distancing. We're not wearing masks. I'm not giving up my freedom so that you can have your safety. So the person who posted it was doing it in abhorrence to this message. They were like, "This is ridiculous, how selfish and these people are terrible people." And of course, everybody in the comments below just piles right on. And to me, whether the message is right or wrong, I really wasn't too fussed with that, but it was startling for me to see how these two people that nobody knew, these weren't friends of anybody, this was just some random photo that somebody was being shared around the internet, and everybody was piling on about how terrible these two people were. And I thought, oh, this is the problem with electronic communication. Because I bet you any money that if you sit across the table from those two people, they're probably reasonable to talk to, they're probably decent company, and that nobody would be throwing all the vitriol at them if they were in person. But what happens when we get behind a keyboard? All of a sudden, bang, 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 this person is terrible, they're selfish, and they're all these names we call people, and it's just not very healthy. It just isn't spiritually very good for us to be looking for the things that we disagree with in other people and highlighting those things. It's okay to disagree. They're going to have it, but just that one seemed to me as an example of seeing the bad in somebody else. The problem is, well, I thought that example was fairly innocuous. I'm seeing this happen more and more in social media with people who actually are friends, who actually do know each other, and they can't have conversations about real issues without somebody being canceled or unfriended or whatever. And that's just not the way it's supposed to be. Seeing the good in other people is not an optional part of Christian theology. It just isn't. It's, there are interesting little fringe theology things. Oh, first heaven, second heaven, who's this? This people, that. You can find plenty of fringy theology. But seeing the good in other people is not one of them. It's not optional. It really isn't. It's part of being an angel. You want to go to heaven? Guess what angels do? They see the good in other people. They point out the good. They excuse the bad. That's what angels do. And we have to develop this angelic mindset. That is part of our deal here, right? Holy City, New Jerusalem, we were just talking about that a couple weeks ago. And guess what? That's part of this deal. That Holy City is that picture of an angelic mindset. Covered in gold. What's gold? Love. Foundation of truth, yes, but covered in gold. So we have to develop that. But the story that comes to my mind when we talk about this idea of seeing the good in others is Noah. I don't know how familiar everybody here is with this kind of little appendix to the Noah story, right? We know the basics. There's the flood, and Noah's the good guy, and saves all the animals, and they get off, and at the very end, after the rainbow and everything, there's this little bit at the end where Noah plants a vineyard. And that's the story we're going to be focusing on here. We're going to do this a little old school in that we're going to spend a large amount of time on a few number of verses. But that's okay. So here we go. This is Genesis chapter 9, verse 18. Probably only read the first half of this. The sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These were the three sons of Noah, and from them came the people who were scattered over the whole earth. Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. When he drank some of its wine, he became drunk and lay uncovered inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father naked and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it across their shoulders. Then they walked backwards and covered their father's naked body. Their faces were turned the other way so that they would not see their father naked. We can stop there. But that finishes up, Noah comes to his senses and he says, oh, cursed is Canaan and praised be the other two. But the image we have of the story is, Noah's drunk on the ground naked, and the two brothers, have this garment, and they walk backwards to cover up dear old dad who's having a bad moment. And we don't want to see the bad side of what dad's doing. So now we're going to take that few verses and kind of pull it apart and see how this shakes out. What is that is going on here? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to help you out a little bit, because I have a hard time keeping these brothers straight in my head. So I'm just going to leave the brothers up top here. So as we go through this, you can kind of refer back to that quickly and say, okay, this is the brother we're talking about. So it starts off, all right, you can see the obvious. Shem, internal church. So in a person, he's our internal. All the things that we think about. Ham, the corrupted church, and Japheth, the external church. So if you follow the story, Shem and Japheth, numbers 1 and 3, they're the good guys in this story. Ham is the bad guy. He's the one who is doing what? He's pointing out his father's naked and drunken state and going, ha ha, look at him. Ah. So, yeah, so that's kind of the basic how the brothers set up. Now, imagine this. Imagine this kind of story happening in real life. I mean, we know it's a myth, but think about it. Here's Noah, and what has he just done? He's just been called by God because he's the only good person left, right? He's the only one left. He says, grab yourself, your family, animals, save yourselves, everything else, it's going down. Now, what if this was played in the news today, right? Ham, he's a news reporter, right? He's going, ha! Look! You thought you were so righteous, Noah. You thought you were so good. You thought you were better than everybody else. Well, look at you. Now you're drunken on the sauce and you're laying there naked. I knew this guy named Fred, and Fred, he died in the flood. He was supposed to be, he's more righteous than you are. He's just pointing out the errors in Noah's ways. Look at you, you hypocrite, Noah. You're not so good. That's not what he's supposed to be doing. He's supposed to be saying the opposite of this, right? Well, God called you. You're not perfect. None of us are. But you've made a mistake here. You've gotten yourself drunk and naked. This isn't a good place to be. Nobody's saying that it is. But clearly God's called you, and therefore you can't be a bad person. I'm seeing the good in you because clearly you must be a decent person. That's not how it would happen in the world today, right? The world today is gotcha. Look at that. You stuffed up. I'm wagging my finger at you. You're a bad person. You're not perfect. And none of us are. And so I don't know why we get this idea that we are. But that's what's going on here on kind of a very literal level. And it's Ham, that corrupted church brother, who's doing that. It's somebody who's taking the teachings of the church of saying these are the ideals we're supposed to hold to, and then just bang, dropping a hammer of truth on somebody. Why? Not for amendment. It's not for the good of the other person. It's dropping the hammer of truth to kind of drop them down a peg. We're gonna stir up the evil stuff. We're gonna see the bad in this guy, and we're gonna make a big show of it. So this is the fundamental issue. And why does Noah get drunk? All right. Well, what happens here is it says he's a man of the vineyard, right? He's doing a garden. All right. So the soil is the church. So a garden, you think about what Jesus says, I am the vine, you are the branches, right? We sing that in church, right? So he's building up doctrine for himself. He's tending to the church, he's learning, he's getting into the teachings, and grapes are a symbol of actions, he who bears fruit, right? So grape is the action, and the wine is a teaching that we've learned from doing something good. So, somebody says, oh, you know what? I'm going to go serve at the soup kitchen. And they go and they do their charitable work. And from that, they come away with this new insight. Guess what? Poor people, they're all not miserable, sad wretches. And they actually need help. They're actually good people here at this soup kitchen. They go, that's changed how I see the world. Great. That's wine. It's a truth that's come through the actions of charity. Well, in this case, why does Noah get drunk? Well, what the writings tell us is that he gets drunk because he takes the teachings that he's got, and then he starts getting to a place where he can't comprehend things. There are things beyond his comprehension, so he starts philosophizing and reasoning and using, science and philosophy to come to spiritual conclusions. This is the same thing that Adam and Eve got in trouble for, right? Using the worldly senses to understand spiritual things. That got them kicked out of paradise. Well, what does it do for Noah? It gets him drunk because he's starting to think how smart he is. He can sort it all out. I'm a big shot. He gets into this bad state. And the nakedness is he's thrown off all of the truth. Anything that covers him, anything that governs his life, he's just thrown it away. He's all about himself and his knowledge. So this isn't a good place for Noah to be. But what the story in the writings keeps highlighting is how wrong it is what Ham did to Noah. That's the theme here. Now you notice, we often think Japheth isn't really the great place. We talk about you don't want to be the external church where all you care about is the rituals and those kind of things. You don't want to be that kind of person. But in this case, Japheth, he's all right. He's him and Shem, they're the ones together. We're not going to see the bad in the person. It's a simple goodness, but it's still on the side of goodness. So, maybe you got to take it easy on the external people too, right? Because the external church isn't that bad of a place to be. And when we dig into this story, one of the things that comes up about external church versus corrupted church is external church still has a conscience. Corrupted church, not so much. Corrupted church is missing a conscience because what the writings say is that a conscience is really nothing more than wanting what's best for somebody and wanting to help them avoid evil. And so what Ham is doing is checking neither of those two conditions. Ham's not wanting what's best for Noah. He's not helping him to get out of evil. He's not doing anything good for him. So this corrupted church, this corrupted state of mind has no conscience. Again, a marker of not a very good place to be. But what we finally get to is number 1079 in Arcana Celestia. And honestly, this really is the money passage in this whole thing. This is what is the smoking gun of how this all breaks down. So here we go. This is subsection 2, but it says, where charity does not exist, self-love is present, and consequently hatred towards all who do not show favor to self. As a result, they see in the neighbor nothing except his evil. Or if they do see anything good, they either perceive it as nothing or else place a bad interpretation on it. Right? Noah's a hypocrite. All that kind of stuff. It's altogether otherwise with those with whom charity is present. And from such presence or absence of charity, these two kinds of people are distinguished from each other. Right? So this is a big deal. You're distinguished on whether you have this ability to see the good in others. Especially when they enter the next life. And those who have no charity, a feeling of hatred is manifest in every single thing. They wish to try everyone and indeed to pass judgment on them. Their one desire is to discover what is evil in them, all the time having it in mind to condemn, punish, and torment. But those who have charity hardly notice the evil in another person, but instead notice all the goods and truths that are his, and on his evils and falsities they place a good interpretation. Of such a nature are all angels, right? That's what we want to be. It being something they have from the Lord, who bends everything evil into good. All right? That's right there what we're trying to aim for. If we want to be in heaven, this is the way we've got to be. All right? What people in this church, know the whole theology of the writings is you don't just earn a place in heaven, you become a miniature heaven. You become that kind of person that belongs there. It's not, heaven isn't just granted admittance to, you've got to be it. And this is part of the deal, right? This is the nature of all angels. This is a big deal. As the story progresses, we get a similar comment in number 1088. Evil spirits never do anything than stir up a person's evils and falsities and condemn him. Angels, however, stir up nothing but goods and truths, and things that are evil and false they excuse. Right? Very different way of seeing things. This is why the Lord tells us, you see it in John, the last quote there in the order of service. So now I'm giving you a new commandment, love each other. Just as I have loved you, you should love each other. And I was sitting with that this week, going, okay, well, you know what? I hadn't really considered it in these kind of terms, but the Lord came on earth to save the good in us, right? Did we, as a world, as a society, love him? No. Were we being nasty? Yes. Were we gracious for and grateful for his showing up? No. Did he save us anyway? Yes. He is seeing the good. He's ignoring the piles and piles of evil and the fact that basically we didn't want to be saved. So I love what is good in you anyway. I see that I can work with you guys. We're going to have to rearrange some things, do some things differently, but I want you to love each other as I have loved you. And that's what he did. He saw the good in us, and we have to see the good in each other as well. There are plenty of other stories in Scripture that highlight this kind of principle, right? The parable of the unmerciful servant, right? The servant is forgiven a small debt by the king, and then the servant or he's forgiven a large debt by the king. He won't forgive a small debt that's owed to him. And then the king finds out and says, hey, I just forgave you a huge debt, and you're here, you're persecuting this guy. Off with you. Out you go. And it's kind of one of the negative side effects of life when you feel like you're a decent person, is that you kind of lose track of how much the Lord has forgiven you. Right? You think, oh, well, I'm okay. I haven't had to be forgiven all that much. Well, guess what the Lord's going to say? Not so much, pal. When you compare yourself to like the infinite goodness of the Lord, you're still way down here. And somebody might be a little bit lower than you, but kind of relatively speaking, you're basically just as evil as the next person in a lot of ways. So there are plenty of examples throughout Scripture where we're asked to see the good in people. And what I want you to leave with here today is that this is not optional theology. It's not, it's a good idea to see the good in other people. This is a nice way to live. No, this is fundamental stuff to being an angel. And I think if you're in this room or watching this broadcast, I think that's what you want, right? We do church to help us become angels so we can live in a happy state and have those days of rest in the seventh day of creation. If you want those things, You need to get busy on this. You need to work on this because this is not optional. Amen.